Is Your Audio Sound? Number 7. Me, Myself, and My Microphone. This is a podcast for people doing audio in church. The ideas are relevant in all live sound applications, but the words and examples I use are mostly from the church context. I avoid using technical jargon and use everyday words in an attempt to make what seems complex a little easier to understand. So to start with, what do we actually plug into our sound system? It's fairly typical to plug in microphones. Your normal professional microphone has a socket in the back with 3 pins. This socket and associated plug is generally referred to as an XLR connector. We then have mic cables that run to a mixer, possibly through a stage box, attached to multi-core or installed cabling. Another primary input is something like a keyboard, a bass or a guitar, all of which accept a pointy connector that is often called an instrument, phono or guitar jack. I generally call it a 6.5mm jack, or just a jack plug. It is good to call it a 6.5mm. Americans call it a 1/4-inch jack, because if you look at your common garden variety headphones that plug into your phone on a separate connector, they are the same shape, but are called a 3.5 or 1/8 jack, or something similar. The 3.5 just relates to the 3.5mm, and 6.5 relates to 6.5mm diameter of the shaft that provides the electrical connections. You'll find that most mixing consoles do not have a place to plug in a 6.5mm connector. The best practice for plugging these in to your system is to go via a product called a direct inject box. This is an electronic box with magic that tricks your mixer into thinking that your guitar or keyboard is a microphone. So a little bit more about DI boxes. We can use them in at least 2 ways. The first way is to come out of an instrument, e.g. a keyboard, into the input of the DI using a 6.5mm to 6.5mm cable, and then we use a mic cable out of the DI into the mixer. Another application is for an instrument player who uses an amplifier, for example, a bass player. In this instance, we do the same as we just discussed with the keyboard, and we come out of the bass into the input of the DI using our 6.5mm to 6.5mm cable, and then there is another 6.5mm socket, either labelled through or out or something similar, that we can connect to the input of the bass guitar amplifier using another 6.5 to 6.5 lead. So effectively, we are stealing the bass guitar signals on the way through the DI and letting the bass player do what they would normally do if they had a continuous cable from their bass guitar to their amplifier. With a good quality DI, the signal will not decrease or degrade on its way through the DI, so you should have a happy bass player. Most DI boxes have a pad or a minus something dB switch, so possibly minus 10 dB switch. If the instrument is overpowering the input to your mixer, then invoking this switch should give you a quieter signal. You might also have a ground or earth lift switch. This allows you to separate or connect the earth connection between your instrument and the sound system. This is not a safety issue. It helps reduce or remove buzz created by earth loops. We could spend 20 minutes talking on that topic alone. Possibly a topic for an entire installment is microphone types and their uses in the church context. There are a few microphone patterns that we use regularly. These are called cardioid and omni and refer to the pickup pattern of the microphone. Probably the most obvious physical style of microphone is the ice cream cone that we usually use for vocals, singing and speech. This microphone is from a group of microphones called cardioid. To understand the pickup pattern of a cardioid microphone, I want you to imagine you blow up a ball and you stick it on a spike, and that deforms the ball to be a funny shape with a big dent in the bottom. What this ball is now representing is the pickup pattern of the cardioid microphone. The tip of the spike, which is now embedded in the middle of the ball, represents the microphone capsule position just inside the grill. The bottom of the spike is the connector side. What is happening is the microphone is not picking up sound. In fact, it's rejecting sound from the spike direction. You would want to speak into the other side of the microphones, you're pointing towards the spike but talking through the ball. This is a very typical vocal microphone pattern. Another microphone pattern that you may be familiar with is generically called a shotgun microphone. It's used in spy movies to be able to listen to things in a far-off room or in a building across the street. So you can imagine a long, thin pickup pattern. A very common pattern of microphone that we use in either headset microphones or our lapel microphones is an omnidirectional microphone. So going back to our imagined ball, the pickup pattern of a headset or lapel is generally the entire ball. Imagine your microphone capsule is right in the middle of the ball and sound is being picked up from the whole area of the ball. So if you put your mouth anywhere inside the ball, you would get great pickup of your voice. This is what we call an omni microphone or omnidirectional. If you watch a newsreader on TV, you will notice that they often have two microphones clipped to their lapel or to their collar. Often they are pointing down. That's okay because these are omni microphones, so they can pick up 360 degrees in all directions. And it's easy to point them down because then the cables can come up over the top of them, whatever clothes they're wearing, with the cable then being hidden down inside their clothes. The reason they've got two is for redundancy. If one stops working, they've still got one. It's really important to understand that what we often call a lectern microphone, so that's a ball of phloem or fluff or a grill on the end of a flexible shaft called a gooseneck, and it's often attached or used on a lectern. These microphones can have various patterns of capsule in use. So you may have an omni, the entire imaginary ball picks up in all directions. You may have a cardioid, the ball with the spike pushed up into its back. This rejects sound from the spike or the gooseneck side. You may have a hypercardioid, which is a cardioid pattern on steroids. So it rejects more from behind it and has a tighter pickup pattern. It's important to understand the pattern of the microphones that you're using so you can get the best results and things sound as good as they can before starting the journey into your system. You can then put them in the right place and if people use them properly. So let's turn to miking instruments. There are a few core things to consider when you're miking up. That's jargon for putting a microphone into a place that will pick up an instrument or vocalist in an appropriate way. When we talk about this specifically for a person singing, we would call it mic technique. So let's start there. We want the person to be singing into the microphone with about 10 centimetres between their mouth and the ball or mesh of the microphone. We want the microphone to be about 45 degrees from the body of the singer. We don't want the microphone parallel with the singer and tucked up under their chin. And it is completely okay for the singer to be singing slightly across the top of the capsule rather than straight into the microphone. If we go right back to my description of sound, all that is inside the top of this microphone is a very delicate piece of paper. So if we thump the top of the microphone or blow wind into the top of the microphone off the bottom of our lips with a P or a T, then the piece of paper reacts violently and we get unpleasant thumps and bumps through our system. Let's talk a little bit about positioning and locations of microphones. Let's go through a few instruments. For an electronic keyboard, I would use a DI. For an acoustic guitar, possibly a DI if the guitar has a 6.5mm jack output. If not, a microphone, but not necessarily pointing at the hole. Have a listen to the guitar. Quite often the best sound from a guitar is behind the strumming wrist. The guitar often makes nicer sound from the timbre and not from the hole. Having said all of that, the guitarist will want you to mic the hole. I can see the hole is usually the loudest and the easiest. Wherever it is, make sure the player knows to stay a consistent distance from the mic and place it where it won't get hit by the strumming hand. For a bass guitar, I would use a DI generally in line on the way to the amplifier, as described in the DI section a few minutes ago. For an electric guitar, I always mic the amplifier just off the grill, pointing near the centre of the amplifier's speaker, because the amplifier is actually part of the sound that the player is producing. Consider most electric guitarists have an array of foot pedals that apply echoes, delays, warbles, and various distortions. All of these things contribute to the sound, as well as their brand, model, sound choice of their amplifier. To mic a flute, generally place the microphone opposite the mouth of the player as the sound comes out of the hole, much like a milk bottle. For a clarinet or soprano sax, again microphone near the mouth, similar to a vocalist, as the reed in the mouthpiece is doing all of the work. To mic an alto sax, the reed is still working hard, but I would mic at the bell to get some of the nice bottom end an alto sax can generate. Acoustic pianos are pretty tough. Quite often, you would want two microphones to capture the full dynamic range. I usually mic either a grand or an upright at 1/3 and 2/3 of the width of the strings, about halfway along the strings. This will work for an upright or grand, but it is important to take extra time and have a good listen to see where it sounds good. Don't be afraid to move your microphones once you've listened to them through the sound system. In a lot of church environments, drums really don't need to be mic'd, but I like having them ready just in case I want to add them to my front of house mix, usually to add clarity. A good start is a kick mic, a snare mic, and an overhead mic. You can often get quite good results from this combination, but be careful when placing particularly a snare mic that it won't get hit by the player when they get super excited. With a kick drum, the player will often have an opinion about where the mic should be placed. Again, have a listen to the drum itself before you place your mic, and you may then need to adjust it once you've heard it through your system. So there we are. Me, myself, and my microphone is a wrap. In other 10-minute installments, we consider good vibrations, turning it down, and cable twists and turns. If you haven't listened to installment 1, please do, as it's the starting point to launch from. All the others are optional, but in a suggested order. Many of the ideas do overlap and should help you on your journey. But until that day comes, I will go and warn the darkness that the light of Jesus Christ has overcome.